Today we had a massive move on the market, and yesterday the focal point of the video was an article by JP Morgan that said there would be a 6 to 7% move based on one key bullet point going into today. We talked specifically what we were looking at and exactly how we would attack this. Now let's break down the S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 to go over exactly where we are going right now. Now I want to highlight where we're at specifically here on the Qs. Now I've highlighted when I was trading the downside on the market, I was focusing on the NASDAQ. Why? Because the NASDAQ was clearly the weakest sector overall. If we looked at the Dow, we looked at the ES, and when we looked at the NASDAQ, it was pure. What was the weakest aspect? It was the NASDAQ. It's that simple. So we wanted to trade that specifically towards the downside over and over. Well, today things changed. Why? Because of that data number. CPI year over year, it was expected, like we talked about yesterday, at 8%. Now, the article said if it came out at roughly 8.4, 8.3%, we could see a 6 to 7% move. However, it went the opposite way, but in the same exact movement, which was also said, and we posted on Twitter some of these data points also over the past few days. And we got the movement, but in the opposite way. So out of the gates, we had no trades open. I'm totally transparent. I told everyone yesterday, the only trade I had was some DWAC. That's some dated stuff going on there. But I looked at this. We started going long out of the gate, out of rip. Because guess what? What did we say? The bullet points and the main things we needed to watch this week were CPI, elections, and the underlying factors of fundamentals between the DXY and yields. Now, if we look at what's happening from the Fed and what they've been saying based on the market, if we look at the last time they spoke, it was right about here. And what was said? They said they will not pivot, right? Because we had this rally because everyone expected a pivot. They said they will not pivot unless data shows an otherwise field of what's happening, right? Because right now data is pointing to continued inflation, continued growth across the board. So I do want to highlight that viewpoint for everyone here. And I want to make sure that is known, okay? That based on the data, that's why we're moving, in my opinion. So make sure you understand that. Make sure you can get that. But right now we're moving up because of this data, CPI. And I said I would not flip bullish until CPI said otherwise or PCE. And CPI did just that. And from there, we can clearly see we're hitting back into our supply here on Qs. But I believe we are working through this and we're going to start moving up. Right now, I still have calls on QQQ. We traded Tesla. We traded NVIDIA. It was a monster day across the board for the team. So congratulations if you made money on this and anything around the clock here. I'm really happy for everyone here. And it was a pretty good day overall for our community. Specifically here, and if you don't know, the Discord link is down below so you can check us out. But this is just today, just across the board, nothing but gains going on. Also, I have to ask you to consider doing two things, liking and subscribing. Every single day, we're going over the key market bullet points you need to be covering. Now, I also want to tell you right now, don't pay attention to the thumbnails, people. Guess what? I have to clickbait. It's a part of YouTube. It is what it is. But when you get into the channel, I tell you exactly what I'm doing, where I'm going with the market, and how I am preparing day after day. And you know when you come here, you're getting unbiased, honest viewpoints. I post the losers. I post the gains. I do it all so you understand what's happening here along with the education. So let's get into it. Now, I do want to cover a little something here also before we go too deep into the charts, right? This is something really important, and shout out to Joffrey from Discord. He's a new member. He posted something from the Bloomberg terminal, and I want people to identify what's happening. Yes, CPI is coming down, but the biggest focal point here for all my bears out there, because I do still believe downside will come. I don't believe this is over. I don't believe the Fed pivot is totally in. I do want to say that, but I trade what the market gives me. That's what I do. If you look at what's happening here, rents are still going up. The factor that's getting hit the most is gasoline of all types, okay? So this is what you're seeing affect CPI, right? Just continuously going up, right? And this is where we're seeing a slowdown, and it's gas that's really coming down here. You could argue, remaining contribution, whatever that really consists of. But right now, you're seeing rents still go up. And I want to highlight, rents will continue to go up, most likely. Now, if you look at where rents typically slow down, just so you know, it's between the months of November through January, the winter months. That's the slow period of renting. After that, specifically February into March, it starts spiking up into the hot months of summer. Those are the highest rent rates because they start to spike, and that's when rates go the highest because everyone's tending to move during those time periods, right? And that comes right into income tax season. That's why that happens typically, if you just want to know that. But that's what happens there. But it's important to realize this has been spiking out of the summer months into winter. So I still believe rents are a major issue. And for all the people saying housing crash, no, there will be no housing crash. In my opinion, there won't be. You might see a reduction in home values, minor compared to what people really think, but you will still see home values justify their price based on the income they can bring in, based on rents continue to go up. Okay, just do the math, go look at the data. I don't really care, but yeah, that's the point of that. So I just want to let people know that I don't believe you're out of the woodworks totally there, but there's very big bullet points you need to view on the broad market. Now, so going into tomorrow, what am I looking at? I believe personally we're going to get above this area, specifically on cubes. Okay, this is just where I want to highlight, but when we go in, you're going to see a little bit why. Now, if we look at cues on a higher dated time frame, I wanted to show you what we're doing here. You have a really nice wedge going on here and you're breaking out of it. Okay, so if you get over this 284 range, I believe we're working towards 290 in a hurry. I believe we're going to be pushing there quick. Now, if I can go into more data into really what's happening here, it's ES. And if we look at ES, there's kind of a lot going on here, so stay with me. I'm going to go to the daily chart so you can see though. And if we look here at the daily chart, I want to highlight where you're at. This was our previous highs we had formed going into the Fed meeting, right? With the rate decision. But when we dropped, we got rejected. Remember, we talked all about this supply here. And guess what? Boom. We broke out of it. We're really ripping out of it. You could argue that supply could go all the way up to, 39.62, but we broke that here at the end of the day. Now, when you get in here a little bit deeper, there's no real resistance until we really get up into 41.60. Now you have a median level at around 40.30 on ES, but that's still 60 points towards the upside. I believe right now that we're going to continue going. That's my personal belief. And I believe NQ, which is tech, is the lagger. Okay. Now people across the board are saying, tech is overvalued still. And that could totally possibly be the case. I'm not going to be the guy that says you can't be, overvalued. Totally possible. But I want to highlight you have a lot of room up to 12.1. And in comparison with NQ to ES, if you look here, you can see that NQ is lagging behind S&P futures by quite a bit. Almost 500 points worth of a lag behind here. If we look at Dow, is Dow lagging behind? No, it's not. It's actually one of the biggest leaders here in the market, and it's breaking out across the board. And if you go into something like the daily, you can see that out of all the indexes, this is the one you're closest to all-time highs, right? You're just really right there. Dow has more room. It's probably going to 34.2, 34.3. I called that out in Discord also. So I do want to highlight where you're at, where you're going. And that's a very important thing to view, because when you're looking at a trade, you need to have a target, right? When you get on a road trip, you don't just think, oh, I'm just going to get in the car and drive. And if you do, thoughts and prayers out to you. But when you're looking at this, I'm always targeting an area. I always have a goal in sight that I'm looking for specifically on these indexes. I have a plan, and I recommend when you're trading to really start to identify those plans for yourself, okay? Really focus on making plans and having an overall vision of how you see us moving, and then taking notes on that as well. So when you're looking here, I believe personally, NQ out of all indexes has the most upside. Upside potential, I believe you have at least a 12.1, 12.15. That's my big level I'd be watching. After that, you have room all the way up to around, almost 13,000. But we're not going to talk about that yet. When you talk about the first target in range, we don't want to jump ahead of ourselves. So that's where I'm looking first, around 12.1, 12.15. That's a monster level. You can go all the way back and see how we retested it, bounced multiple times, and ultimately how you've reacted over the past also. So that's where we're at. That's where I see us going. That's what I'm looking at. Now, looking across the board, how are stocks acting? This is where things really start to heat up. If you look at something like Microsoft, and this is the daily chart, and I have to go down a little bit more for you, you're starting to see what's happening here with gaps. You're starting to see areas getting filled. And this is really the concern for me, is you have a lot more room to go here on Microsoft. Filling the gap all the way almost towards, I believe on the daily time frame, you can actually see this here. We can go really quick to make sure I'm not lying to you. I want to make sure the 25th is about right here. So it's going to be almost a 248. A lot of room there. Looking at something like Apple, you already filled the gap on the day, right? You filled that right there at 145, called that a little bit earlier in Discord also. Still have more room though across the board. Looking at Nvidia, we talked about this being one of the strongest sectors in the market with Nvidia. You held that level, you pushed right back up to 145. I believe we talked about this yesterday also. And guess what? You're pushing up to 160. These are areas of the market that were showing the most weakness overall, and now they are flipping and showing the strongest. Now, the big thing to look at here is what's happening with option chains. And I believe you're seeing gamma occurring straight into most of these options, specifically into these stocks. And that's why you're seeing them get such high volatility pushes, okay? And I believe you might see this continue going into early next week. Now, I'm not saying you're going to stop the upside into next week. I still am very bullish until we get any type of bad news, because right now all eyes are on a quote-unquote Fed pivot. Now, I'm not saying I agree that there's a Fed pivot or that's coming tomorrow or anything like that. It's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying the market is taking this information in as positive from what Powell has said that needs to happen in order to get a pivot. And they're using this as a justifiable outcome. Again, stay with me. I do not believe we have a long-term bottom, but short-term, I have to trade what the market gives me, okay? Because I have my day job and then I have my long-term investing. So those are where you have to kind of split what you're doing overall. And that's ultimately where I come in with these videos. So as I'm looking here, I still love the upside potential across the board. One of the biggest plays I'm going to talk to you about, and the only real thing I want to talk about here today, is one, I have Q calls. I want everyone to know that. But I believe Tesla has potential. You have everyone and their mother talking about one thing, and it's borderline comedy for me. And I'm going to go to the weekly time frame here. Actually, I'm going to go over to here. I want to use TradingView because I don't have all my drawings on here, and I don't want to delete everything. Everyone's talking about Head and Shoulders. Everyone. If you're on Twitter, you're like, oh, we have a Head and Shoulders. First of all, I don't believe this is a Head and Shoulders. You could argue maybe it's the ugliest Head and Shoulders I've ever seen. I don't believe it's going to happen. Two, if you're implying this is a Head and Shoulders, then I believe based on a measured move, you're targeting almost 150. And I've seen even crazier targets aiming down towards 60 to $50. And I believe that's just stupid. I believe it's not coming. I don't believe it's happening. And I'm not calling anyone out, so please, people, don't say, are you calling out so-and-so? No, I'm not calling out anyone. This is my personal opinion. I believe Tesla is one of the most valuable companies in the world, maybe the most valuable as far as future growth. If we look at Amazon, we look at Apple, we look at Google, we look at Meta, I believe those are closer to reaching, the peak of their value than something like Tesla. I believe Tesla is just beginning to get a grip on where they're going as far as the AI tech aspect. So you need to view that. So I think Tesla has a lot of upside. And all I want you to do here is just look at this level, okay? Look at where you've bounced essentially since 2021. And I just want you to just leave this with you. I believe you have upside minimal 240, 230, personally. Very bullish on this stock. Think it has a lot of upside. I traded it for a little bit on the day, but I'm looking definitely to get back in this thing. You have a daily gap fill still at 197. You need to watch out for this. That will probably get filled, I would assume, really quick. Be on the lookout for this, but I'd also be looking for the 200 test coming in soon. That's going to be a very big level. Now, why I said 230, 240 as my upside potential, we remember how big of a level this was and how often we got rejected from the 230 level. So that has to be my baseline target because I don't know how we're going to react when we get there, and we want to see if buyers start to strengthen. Also, I don't think we're going to keep going up forever. I don't think the bottom is in yet, so I do want to highlight that. But I have to give you a realistic target. And I think volatility can kick in really quick with Tesla as far as we get any news also. So that's my viewpoint here. That's what I'm looking at personally here on Tesla. Now, we go to some of these fundamental viewpoints for out of here. DXY. DXY, once CPI was released, it was game over for the dollar. And the dollar has been one of the best tools to understand movements on the market, people. It's been the best. It's been one of the best. When we dip on the market, it's been because DXY is bouncing. And if we look here over and over and over. So you finally got your break and you dropped right down towards a key level, right? Right towards there. I'm looking for us to come down further, possibly towards the test of 105, 106. I still think we have more room to come down here. This is going to be my big level, basically 105.7 all the way down to about 104.9. That's my level there. Looking at yields, this is also extremely important. And again, This is where I believe and why I believe we have more upside on the market, okay? It's because these big indicators are finally being affected. We're seeing the VIX drop, we're seeing yields drop, we're seeing all these things drop. Now, I don't know if they're going to last. That's why I keep saying, and I got to keep repeating myself because I don't want people to misinterpret what I say. It's the only thing I hate about having a YouTube channel is people misinterpreting what I say. I don't believe the Fed is going to completely pivot, but you need to understand the market is pricing this pivot in right now. It's what's happening. You had your best day maybe on the NASDAQ that I've ever seen, a 7.4% upside day. That is incredible, people. I don't know the last time we've had a 7.4% day on the market. And if we look at this inversion, the best indicator of a recession, whatever you want to talk about, this is the first time you've cracked below those higher lows that you've been making, okay? You had a little bit here, so we need to see if we're going to bounce back quick. If you bounce back quick, I'd be concerned. But this is where we need to watch where we're at now. Do you start to drop below this? If this starts to drop, I think we could see some cooling. We could see some good stuff happening in the markets, signaling for a lot of big buyers to step back in, okay? That's the thing we need to be thinking about right now. And then we just had elections wrap up. So there are a lot of good things are happening right now, and it's just all coming together for the best, obviously. Now, before I let you out of here too, I just want to let you know, when I was going over yesterday, the past gains on the month, continue. And like, if you look at what happened on the market today, if you just came in, you let the market do what it was going to do, make its decision, you had so many opportunities on the day, people. So many, right? I said yesterday, you don't need to play necessarily these crazy data pools as far as CPI. You don't need to play those, right? Those are total guesses if you really get down to it. But if you look at this, and even on my Twitter, this is what I recommend following, right? If you come in here, I told everyone 5 hours ago, I don't have the exact time. Is there an exact time here? At 10:20 a.m. Central. I said, you have an ascending triangle. You're going to break up. You're trying to go to 283, 284 here on Qs, right? Again, this is showing you, and that's why I don't do this to say, oh, I'm the best trader there is. I do this to prove to people that you don't have to rush in the market. I do this to prove that the formula works, people. It works. You don't have to have a fear of missing out on everything, no matter what everyone says on Twitter. And guess what happened after this? If we look at Qs, where did we end up going? Where are we at right now in the after hours? 284, people. That's where we're at. That's where we're going. That's how the market's moving. There's proof in what we're doing here. I'm not a hype man. I'm not here to take your money. If you want to join Discord, join. But guess what? That's why I have so much free information. So if you really don't need to pay, you don't have the money to pay, and you want to learn, get on Twitter, ask questions, be vigilant, get in the lives when we have them here. Because people, I'm trying to build a nice community here to empower you and to get you ready to trade in this market every single day.